Hi everyone and welcome. This is the first of our 8-part series that we're going to be doing focusing on the mental game, and this is going to be a great kickoff to 2024 golf season. And anytime that we start to talk about the golf mental game, I like to remind everyone that all of the things that we learn that we try to practice for our golf mental game, we can apply to our everyday lives. So if you're a student watching this, if you're a young professional just getting started in your career, or you're in the C-suite, years of experience, anything that touches on the mental game are daily practices or simple practices that you can implement in your daily life off of the golf course also. So I hope you take that into consideration while you're reading through with me. So for this series, we're going to be going through Steve Williams' book, Golf at the Top. And remember that he was one of Tiger Woods' caddies. So when thinking of, what we should cover for mental game and thinking about something that would be impactful, my mind went to, how do you even get a back seat into understanding how these professionals think, elite professionals think when they're out on the course, high pressure situations, high dollar amounts at stake, right? Reputations on the line. But then how do they all keep it together? What are some tips and tricks that they use? And, the people who are closest to them are the people who may have the best insight. So I'm really looking forward to diving into Golf at the Top with Steve Williams. So he's going to be sharing tips and techniques from when he caddied with some other famous golfers as well. We'll get into like how he started and things like that, but ended up his career with Tiger Woods, and he made a huge impact on the game also as a caddy. So really looking forward to it. So diving in. So each week I'll either have the book with me, and you can get the book on Amazon or wherever you buy your books, Kindle, whatever, and follow along with me. If I don't have my book every week, I'll at least have my notes. So I'll be reading and taking notes and sharing, what I'm digesting with you all. And it'll be great if you're reading along also. You can comment back with some of the highlights that you're taking away or things that just really, hit a nerve for you and you're like, oh, this is good, this is a gem. So let's jump into it. So I read through the foreword, and I thought it was really awesome that Tiger Woods actually wrote the foreword for this book. And, it just goes into more about the relationship between the two people as opposed to, the golfer and the caddy, because, Steve Williams had a, huge role to play in a lot of the performances of Tiger Woods. So whenever you see both of them, they're a team working together. So the caddy has to understand the player, knows how to, spot when they're in a good zone in their game, when they're not in the zone, help them stay in the zone, help them snap out of, any spirals that they may be having. So it was really great to just notice that, Tiger was on board with this at the time. I can't speak to the nature of their relationship now because, Steve wrote a different book later on. But at the time when they were just focused on the golf, which is what we're going to stay focused on, Tiger, put some really great words in here in the foreword. And, he mentioned that golf needs this book. So if Tiger says it, we're going to, think of it as gold, and we're going to go by it. And so when we get out of the foreword and we go into 10 feet tall and bulletproof, this is how we all want to feel when we're stepping out onto the course. Hopefully it starts like the morning or, whatever time of day it is that you're getting started to play or getting ready to play. But you want to start that day feeling 10 feet tall. You want to wake up and have a good routine. You want to be able to get out into the practice range, go through your routine, feel great about the shots that you're hitting, and then execute great golf, right? But before we get into just the nature of feeling 10 feet tall, I like the quote that he puts at the top from Bobby Jones. And the course that I played at, we had someone and his name was Bobby, so everybody just called him Bobby Jones, and he was the best golfer at our golf club also. So it was a little fun to see a quote from Bobby Jones here, and it was also something that my dad also used to mention to me, but it says, Competitive golf is played mainly in a 5.5-inch course, and that's the space in between your ears. And so my dad he didn't always put it in the frame of golf, but like when I was studying for anything at school, or just like to remember, like how to live life, or, like keep your head on, like everything is between your ears. So that he always just, made me remember to use my brain for everything. So Bobby Jones says it here in relation to competitive golf. And so hopefully you're in the realm of competitive play. Even if you're just going out for a fun day with your friends, you still want to play well, right? So it may be hidden in there very subtly, but at the end of the day, we all want to perform well and do well. So I like that Steve goes into sharing a little bit about his background before he gets started with, working with Tiger Woods. So on his own, he'd achieve 100 wins on the bag. And this, like his 100th win came with Tiger. And we touch on that in this chapter. And he worked with some really amazing golfers before. So he starts his journey, he was going to be a rugby player, or at least that's what he thought he was going to be. And then he also loved golf, but golf sort of took over his life. His dad was a golfer. His dad was on, amateur circuits and played with different pros when possible. And his first professional player, Peter Thompson, sort of recruited him to come and caddy for him. And when he earned his first paycheck as a caddy, I think that was like his turning point. So he went on to be on the bag for Peter Thompson. He even had an opportunity to work with Greg Norman for a few years. And there's some funny inside stories that they touch on there. And then he also worked with Raymond Floyd before working with Tiger Woods. So Steve had an opportunity to, be on the bag for some really great players ahead of time before even being attached to Tiger Woods. So when Tiger was working with Butch Harmon, and something that I learned, I didn't know that Butch Harmon's dad was also a Masters champion. So all of that is, like you get a little bit of history every time you tap into these books. But Tiger was working with Butch. And when Tiger decided that it was time to move on from Fluffy, so if ever you've seen like old golf tournaments with Tiger, and you see, like a more heavy set guy, white hair, white beard, Fluff, he was Tiger's first caddy, and he did an amazing job on the bag with him. And, when it was time for them to part ways, then Butch Harmon, who was Tiger's coach at the time, made a call to Steve. And Steve was actually getting ready to retire from working with Raymond Floyd. And then, he took that call. Tiger made the follow-up call. And then they began to work from there. So to say, the rest of that is history, right? One thing that he mentioned, though, was that when he met Tiger, one of the things that he noticed was his captivating attitude. And with all of the professionals that he'd had the pleasure of working with and being on their bag, he noticed that each of them had an intensity of the will to win, right? So they had the intensity of the will to win. If you're taking notes, you can write that down, highlight it, circle it, star it, put it everywhere on your mirror and everything. But if you're going to be a champion, or like not even just in sports, but in any part of your life, you have to have the intensity to win in order to make things happen, right? And then some other like cool points I was just writing down that I took away from it. In addition to them having this intensity of the will to win, one thing that he noticed when he was working with Peter Thompson, he said that he was a great thinker, he was very clever, and he plotted the course beforehand. So if you've ever gotten ready for a tournament, they've probably given you a link to, I think it's Blue Golf. I haven't seen it in a while because I haven't competed in a while, but I know it's like definitely still in use. But you can chart the course before you get started. So you see the yardage for each hole. It's like looking at a scorecard, but it may have a little bit more details on it depending on how they set it up for the tournament. But you get a chance And some courses even have like overviews of each of the hole. So you can do or watch the overviews of the hole, or go and do a practice round and just walk the course, chart the course, take notes. And from there, you will be able to have, like it's like your repertoire of, build up your artillery of how you're going to play the course, like what's going to be your plan of action for when you step out onto the course. So Thompson was a great thinker. He was very clever, and he plotted the course beforehand. So this is number one. If ever any of you who are watching this want to go and compete, we study the course before we go there, because you want to know what club to use. It could be a par 5, long par 5, but there may be trouble off the tee. Do you really want to hit your driver, or can you hit a 3-wood or a hybrid and get off the tee safely and put yourself in great scoring position for the next shot? So plotting the course beforehand, I thought, was really key for him to mention. And a few key performance factors that he mentions also, from noticing the players that he was fortunate enough to work with over the years. And he mentions also, that he didn't have that much schooling, but being able to observe people and learn just by observing and just, being very aware, you can learn a lot, right? And so he noticed that a key performance factor from these elite players also was that they think of golf differently, right? So in the player's mind, that's where the game is happening. So any shot that you see, so if I hit a straight shot, I was thinking of a straight shot in my mind. If I hit a fade or a hook, I was probably afraid of hitting a fade, or afraid of hooking it, and ended up fading it or hooking it. So the player's mind relates to the club and the ball during the second or so it takes to execute the stroke. So, just personal reflection for myself. I posted in our newsletter this week that I finally got out to the golf course this past weekend. It's been way too long. And I remember on number 10 tee, so we're making the turn, and it's a short par 4. We're playing an executive course. I'm like, let's ease back into this slowly. So we're playing an executive course, par 4, and my playing partner was like, yeah, let's get this on the green. I was like, sure, no problem. I fade it, or I slice it off the tee, and luckily a tree saves me and it stays in the rough. But I remember being over the ball and not really ready, but I didn't want to slow down the game. So, and in my mind also, I'm just like, it's the first day back out, just see what happens. And it wasn't the greatest shot, but in hindsight, I was asked my players or my students, if ever you don't feel ready, step off of the ball. I did not do that. So don't do as I do as I say. But your mind, what you're thinking in your mind, or what you can see with your mind's eye, that's what is generally going to be executed, right? And the next thing is that thinking of mental training is the best way to achieve the best result during impact. So again, just going back to understanding the inner workings of the mind. And when he continues to speak about this, the next step from there, so after observing that the thought process leads or gives the ultimate result, then he goes into mentioning how the professionals go about training their mind for these high pressure situations. So practice, we think of, okay, I need to go to the range. I need to hit X amount of balls. I need to be putting. I need to sink all of these putts. I need to work on my chipping. I need to work on my grip. I need to adjust my posture. The list can go on and on and on, right? But Steve says here, practice is training the mind to exert the greatest possible control over the ball's behavior through the agencies of the swing and the golf club. And I'll read that again. Practice is training the mind to exert the greatest possible control over the ball's behavior through the agencies of the swing and the club. And when I think of mental training, getting ready for tournaments, I listened to an interview from one of an LPGA player that I followed. Her name is Yanni Singh. She used to be world number one, and she held world number one for a while. And once I listened to an interview, and Yanni said her practice session was literally just watching film. And I'm not sure if it was watching her film only, but I'm sure it also included watching film of past tournaments and just observing other athletes, right? And I'm sure this is not, not that I'm sure, I know this is not just in golf. All other sports, you watch film, you study the other athletes, you study your competitors. In golf, you're studying your competitors, but you're also studying the course. So you watch them, how did they play this par 5? What did they do off of the tee? Did they play it at the corner of the turn, if it's like a dogleg left or right? Or did they play for the open end of the fairway? What club did they use off of the tee box? Was there any other hazards? Were there any other hazards on that hole? Did they lay up? If there was water, did they try to go for it? So you can study a lot of film on YouTube. There's some good tournaments that you can watch. You can have it on in, at any time of day. And, just like you can sit there and just really observe the players. This weekend, there's the South African Open is on right now, and there are a few players that I was watching, and I was just amazed by their swing. So some people are just like swinging it out the park, and then there are other players that, and forgive me, I don't remember anybody's names, but some other players are just sinking these amazingly long putts. I'm just like, geez, like he hasn't missed. I saw this guy, he probably sunk like 2 or 3 like 30-footers. I was like, okay, you win for the day, longest putt of the day. And but so that there's so many other things that you can notice and observe from the players. You can watch their putting styles, you can watch how they approach the green, you can watch bunker play, chipping, second shots. There are endless opportunities there, right? But I love it that there's opportunity to review film and footage from top players and make that part of your practice. If you have the capability to, or you have somebody on the driving range with you or on the course with you, you can record your own videos, right? Have them record you and then watch your video, watch your film, really see what you're doing. You could pay attention to things like your setup. How long does it take you from the time you set up to the ball to when you actually start your swing? What kind of things are you thinking of between that time? Can you shorten that time? Is there a negative or positive effect when you shorten that time? After you start your swing, what are you doing? Like, what is your body doing? Watch your initial movements. Watch the transition. Watch the downswing. Watch how you finish. Pay attention to your tempo. You can watch things like understanding your balance. Did you hold your balance? How was your finish? Watch your facial expression. You can watch your facial expression in your setup. You can watch your facial expression at the end of the swing. Like, what's really happening, right? So practice is training the mind to exert the greatest possible control over the ball's behavior through the agencies of the swing and the club. And you can incorporate a lot of video into this mental game practice. So this was just the beginning, right? But there's so much that was unpacked. I also like here that while Tiger, so I think it was like their second, forgive me, I don't remember exactly, and I could probably find it. Okay, so their 4th tournament together, they were playing in South Carolina, and Tiger ended up winning this event. and it was a good event for Tiger Woods, but it was an even bigger event for Steve. And I like that when they were going through the interviews afterwards, I believe Tiger said, you know, it's a great, people don't even know, but it's a great event because it was Steve's 100th win on the bag. And so I think that was something huge to celebrate. And he said he was only 40 years old. He had just turned 40. I think I'm in the wrong chapter. I went ahead a little bit. But I think he said he was only 40 years old when that happened. So, I mean, huge, what am I trying to say? Accomplishment, excuse me. So, huge accomplishment by the age of 40 to be on the bag, to have earned 100 wins so far. Okay. Yeah, he was 40 years old. Yeah. So Tiger says, people have no idea how big this win was. It's just not the player of the year or the money title. It was Stevie's 100th win. And so that just, I feel like it just goes into the nature of their relationship. Like Tiger Woods realized, like, hey, you know, this is good for me, but yo, this guy is doing like big things. So I thought that was really good. And then he mentioned, so then Steve goes on to say that over, you know, the course of time where he's been able to witness 100 victories with these amazing players, that he's been able to understand the mind under pressure. He's been able to observe people's behavior during triumph and during despair. And I just thought that was amazing because, you know, he's literally, it's like when you said somebody's a fly on the wall, he is it. So he has been in, it's not even just like inside the ropes. He's on the bag. He's next to the person who's able to achieve like all of these great things out on the course. And I just think it's amazing. And he goes on to say that the difference between the winner and the loser is how the mind is trained for competition, right? So the difference between somebody who's going to win and somebody who's going to lose is how they train their mind. Are you mentally ready? Are you mentally tough? What are you going to do if you go and you tee up and the first you teed off and it goes OB? I have a great story about a tournament that I played in, but I will spare you the details. But what are you going to do? You know, like, are you going to be tough enough to brush it off? You can still come back and break par, even if you hit one shot OB in the beginning. It's not easy, right? It's not an easy thing to do. It's easy to say like, oh yeah, I can brush it off. But when you put yourself in a competitive environment and you're amongst the other best, right? Anything can happen. So you have to be ready for good things that are going to happen to you, negative things that are going to happen to you. But if you can train your brain, then even the negative things should not be able to crush you. You should be able to be successful even though, you know, the world is breaking down around you. So he goes, I'm really excited about this book. He says that he has a precise formula and schedule that he's observed that, you know, these great athletes utilize when they're training. So I just think it's going to be great to dive into it. And so he goes on to say, I like this one. Mental training aims to help the golfer reach a particular state of mind under the heat of competition, then maintain it throughout the day, throughout the tournament, because the tournament could be up to 4 days, and to also maintain it throughout their career, which is what you want, right? Like if you're going to train to be your toughest, and again, like I said, mental training goes beyond the golf course, right? So if you're an educator, if you're, you know, small business owner, if you're an executive, and every day you got to go into your workspace and you have to own your workspace. You're amongst other professionals who are bringing their best every day. You know, you need to mentally train so that you can reach a particular state of mind under the heat and competition and maintain that throughout your day, throughout the week. I remember when I used to work in sciences, because I was fresh out of competitive life, to me, I would say every week was a tournament week. I would literally go into work with that mentality. Every week was a tournament week. And I worked in very demanding groups in research and development. And I literally had to like refresh myself every weekend, mentally clear my mind, and try to go in there and, execute on like the highest level possible. And sometimes it was not on the highest level possible, different things like sleep. I feel like sleep is a huge part of understanding peak performance, or not understanding, but getting enough rest is a huge part of being able to execute at the highest. And if you deprive yourself of sleep, any mental training that you're trying to do is just going down the drain, because your body's not rested and you cannot retain anything positive, right? So that's a huge part of it also. It would be interesting to see if he dives into that at any point throughout the book. Last note before we wrap it up, because there's so much that we can just like talk about from like the first chapter, the forward and the first chapter, right? But this peak performance zone that athletes get into, somebody can stumble upon it. It can be, to use a word like a fluke, right? But you can stumble upon it. But the professionals are the ones that can maintain it day in and day out, and even bring it out when necessary. Like, you may not always be in that peak performance zone, but when it's go time, you need to be able to like, okay, we need to turn this on. I need to make this putt, wrap up this hole. We're not going to have no triple bogeys, quadruple bogeys. We need to just wrap it up and move on to the next hole. Like if you're a business owner, like, okay, this is the end of, whatever deal that it is that you need to, conclude, make the sale, or whatever it is, right? Same sort of mentality. So you need to be able to pull it out when necessary, or bring it out on demand. I like that phrase, bring it out on demand. Whenever you need it, right away, you can have it, okay? And let's see, final takeaways. Yeah, I would just say that for permanent improvement, mind training is the key, hands down. He says people always come up to him and they're asking him for, like the secret, like the inside, like how do I be great? And he said there's no magic. Mind training is the key. And I wrote hands down, like that's the biggest thing. So mind training specialized for golf is what this book is going to talk about. I'm so excited to jump into this book and to read it with all of you, and I'm looking forward to gaining some great takeaways that we can translate out onto the driving range, and that you can take out onto the course with you, and even take it beyond the course with you. So that could be in family life if you're a mom, because you need to be very mentally tough to manage a household and manage motherhood. You could be then there's so many different stages of motherhood I couldn't even imagine as yet. But mental training, this is going to be specialized for golf. But I always say, anytime we talk about mental training in golf, we can extend it beyond the golf course. So you could be a mom who loves golfing with your friends on Sunday mornings or whatever day you have an opportunity to go out and play. Mental training will help you at home and on the course. You could be a business owner, you could be a collegiate player, you could be someone who is aspiring to go out onto the tour, you could be a high school player, or you could be an executive and you just want to be able to play well on the weekends. Whatever level of golfer you are, or whatever level of your career or personal life you're in, mental training is the key, as Steve Williams says. So I am going to wrap up our first session. This is Golf at the Top with Steve Williams, and we're going to continue diving into this book for the next 8 weeks.